Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next panel. This is the Age of Lost Omens Pathfinder Society Guide. I am Luis Loza. I am a developer at Paizo working on the Lost Omens lines for Pathfinder. And I have with me here three of my favorite people in the world, and we're going to go and introduce them as well. We'll start with Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda Zeiss-Palmer. I am the Organized Play Managing Developer at Paizo. That means that I do a lot of logistics for the Organized Play programs, Pathfinder Society, Starfinder Society, and Pathfinder Adventure Card Society.
All right, next, let's learn about Mike.
I am Mike Sayre, the Pathfinder Society developer at Paizo, and that means that I outline and plan a lot of the stories and adventures that everybody plays when they play in the Organized Play program.
Finally, last but not least, Leo.
I'm Leo Glass. I'm a senior editor at Paizo, and I was the editing lead on Lost Omens Pathfinder Society Guide, which means I edit a lot of words, but also kind of help scope some of the direction as the book gets polished and finalized. And if you can hear my dog in the background, I'm really sorry.
So as I mentioned, if we look at our first slide here, we're going to be talking about Lost Omens Pathfinder Society Guide, which is a new book that we're releasing here in October. I think you can pre-order now, and if you're a subscriber, you're set for that. But the first thing we got to talk about when it comes to talking about the Pathfinder Society Guide is, what is the Pathfinder Society? And I think I'm going to hand that off to Linda and Mike, who I think know best about what the Pathfinder Society is and could explain the society in both our setting and Organized Play.
So the Pathfinder Society, like Luis said, is both the in-world organization of explorers and treasure hunters and storytellers who really take on a wide variety of roles in the world of Golarion, because they call to people from all sorts of backgrounds and perspectives come to join the society. So there's some people who think of the society more as, we're an organization that's about, we're going to push at the edges of the boundaries of our understanding, or we're going to try to use the society as a force for good, or we're going to try to use this as a way to build our own public profile. So really, a lot of people in the world take different approaches to what it means to be in the society, and those perspectives shape sort of the way that the society functions and interacts with the world. And this also comes into play in terms of, is the society more about, let's take care of this one little exploration here, or let's get ourselves involved on a larger political scale. So there's really a lot of potential for stories with the Pathfinder Society to have a wide variety of scopes. Mike, do you want to talk about what the Pathfinder Society is, sort of as a out of game?
Yeah,
organization?
Absolutely. So in the same way that in world, the Pathfinder Society is an organization of like-minded people who go out and push the edges of the map and have these wonderful adventures together, in the real world, we also have the Pathfinder Society, which is what we call our organized play group of people who play Pathfinder in gaming venues, at home, conventions, all over the world. We've got groups in Russia, Brazil, Australia, Japan. I literally can't do this list without leaving dozens of locations out. So I'm going to leave it there with the caveat that is only the tiniest fraction of the people who play this game. And it lets you take a persistent character. You make your character, who is the person that you want to play, your avatar in this game world, and you can play them at any of these locations. You could, and some of the people on this team have, sat down at a table on one side of the United States on a Wednesday to play that character, and then taken that exact same character and played them on another country just a few days later. And that's really what it is. In the same way that the Pathfinder Society is an organization of people who get together to share their ideals and adventures in world, that's what it is out of world as well.
And the Pathfinder Society really benefits from an amazing and dedicated group of volunteers, many of whom you'll see if you are doing events here at Gen Con or otherwise. They are, without them, the program would not exist, for all the work that they do to organize games, coordinate people, create conventions, run games for people. So I want to say thank you to everyone who is working so hard to make that possible.
Yes, thank you all.
So going into the Pathfinder Society Guide, we wanted to tell you all of that and more. This book is a Lost Omens book, which means it's primarily focused on the setting here and talks about what the Pathfinder Society does. And when we were first putting this book together, we had to decide, what do we want this book to do? Who do we want this book to be for? And early on, we decided we wanted this to be the comprehensive evergreen guide on the Pathfinder Society as an organization. In the setting, what that means is we have to give you a full explanation on everyday life as a Pathfinder, joining the Pathfinder Society, the kinds of missions they go on, the people that you interact with, and all these different things in such a way that is both not necessarily a rehash for people who have been playing the game for 10, 12 years at this point, and useless knowledge at that point, but also accessible to new players who are just joining in to Pathfinder for the first time, learning about our setting for the first time, and possibly joining into organized play for the first time. So there's a lot of work that the book had to do to fill in all of these different information gaps, and also work as a tool to bring people into the game. And I think Leo did a lot of work with the help of the editors to channel the book in such a way that it kind of met all of those goals.
Yeah. I mean, what's really interesting and kind of about this process is that, and this panel, is that we have people who started on the very beginning of the process, kind of in its creative development. And then when it transitions over to editing, that's where we really put the polish on. But we're working very closely with all of you. I loved all the conversations we got to have during this book about how does the Pathfinder Society sort of influence the setting, and what sort of we can pull from the larger world of Galarian that everyone can use at their tables, kind of an organized play as well. And I love that integration, because I feel like this is really a really great way, and this book presents a great way for players to interact with the world and with the setting at their tables and organized play in a way that they might not have been able to before. So I think this book represents a lot of those opportunities. It was really cool to kind of see the whole process from start to finish and be involved in all of that.
So let's dive into a little bit about what this book features. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to give you a rundown about the everyday life of a Pathfinder, how you join the organization, and maybe what you do on a day-to-day basis. And that's the early parts of the book, as well as the history of the Pathfinder Society. But the big sections of the book, I think, start first with our next slide here, the Pathfinder Society factions, which, Linda, do you mind telling us a bit about what the factions are in the Pathfinder Society?
Yeah, sounds good. So this image here shows several of our faction leaders, and we can go into more detail about specifically what the factions are in a minute. But from a general sense, factions are organizations of like-minded Pathfinders that gather together to promote certain parts of what the society does based on what their priorities are. And we've had factions as a feature in the Pathfinder Society campaign for quite a while. To start off, they were more like, this is the Chiliax faction. This is the Taldor faction. We're here to represent the interests of these nations or these goals as outside forces that are influencing the society. But as we look to second edition, we really wanted to make sure that those factions and are more geared toward what people do from the inside of the society and how they want to shape the society. And that is something that we have reflected as well in the transitions in the story going from first edition to second edition, because we very much try to make sure that what's going on with the in-world organization and what's going on with the out-of-game organization mirror each other. So in terms of the factions themselves,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
The factions themselves. Let's look at our first faction here. We're looking at Fola Baron, who is the leader of one of the factions, the Envoys Alliance. This book, its second chapter is all about the factions and the different groups you can join in the Pathfinder Society. And this is the first one we get to look at. Envoys Alliance is a group all about the well-being of the Pathfinders themselves. There are thousands of members in the organization, and they get into a lot of different escapades. Some of them are fun, some of them are dangerous, and that means that sometimes people can get hurt. And Envoys Alliance is all about taking care about each other, taking care of your fellow Pathfinder, and making sure that the society is doing well. If its members are doing well, the society surely can do well on that. And Fola Baron is the leader, and it's pushing towards that. And this is one of the four factions main factions that you can join. And in the book itself, it features a full rundown of what the faction's about, Fola's history, but it also includes interesting stuff that you can take if you are a member of the Envoys Alliance. So there are usually new pieces of equipment that you can take in a given section, depending on which faction you join. So, if that sounds like something you'd like to do, you can join up and get something like the body recovery kit to bring back your lost Pathfinders and hopefully let them fight another day on that. So let's look at our next faction here, which I think Mike can give us a rundown on.
Yeah, our next faction is the Grand Archive, and that is Gorm Greathammer there, Dwarven Prince and Pathfinder of significant renown, who has been in our setting for actually many years, not always as the leader of a faction, but following the relatively catastrophic events that were the end of first edition and the beginning of second edition. Gorm has really kind of dedicated himself to leading those Pathfinders who are most dedicated to the preservation of history and the discovery of new knowledge. That's a lot of what the Grand Archive is about. Now, there's another faction we're going to talk about later who are the ones that push back the edges of the map and are really the gung-ho explorers. That's not quite what Grand Archive are. Grand Archive are the ones who are on the same boat as the people pushing back the edges of the map and retaining the presence of mind to keep logs and charters of where they've gone, draw the maps, do those things. They're the person who makes sure that all of those discoveries are properly logged and preserved for history. And Gorm is really good at that because Gorm is a bard, and other people who like to blend the going out and seeing new sites with making good records of what they have seen and done are the ones who like to come here and work with the Grand Archive.
All right, speaking of pushing that map and rolling it out, let's look at our next faction. Linda, tell us about the Horizon Hunters.
So the Horizon Hunters, led by faction leader Calistro Bennery, is a faction that's really about exploring new places that nobody has been before, or that nobody has been in a really long time, and seeing what they are all about. And the Horizon Hunters also has a strong sense of, don't just explore this place, but also look good doing it. Make your mark on the Pathfinder Society's history. Get your name written up in the Pathfinder Chronicles for future generations to look up to you and to admire. There is no surer way to get mocked as a member of the Horizon Hunters than to go to a distant city and then to claim that you've discovered it. They'd be like, no, people live there. You didn't discover that. You have to actually discover something real and contribute to the basis of understanding. And daring, bravery, and really a flexible spirit are very valued in the Horizon Hunters. And Calistro Bennery as the leader and a former pirate really exemplifies that spirit.
All right, and we have one more faction here, which I think Leo's going to talk to us about.
Yeah, so the Vigilant Seal, in my opinion, is awesome. It's led by Ando Klein, who's pictured here, as where all my colleagues talk to you about, exploring in the case of the Horizon Hunters, or going out into dangerous caverns and terrible places, cataloging artifacts and making, negotiating with strange and new creatures. That's all well and good. but there are repercussions of all of that. There are dangers that can be unleashed upon Galarian. And what's great about the Vigilant Seal is that they take their duty to protecting and preserving the world from those dangers very seriously. So the Vigilant Seal is really all about, as to where the rest of the Pathfinder Society, it focuses on exploring, reporting, and cooperating. The mantra of the Vigilant Seal is protect, contain, and destroy. So if Mike goes out and finds a scary artifact, he might, petition the Pathfinder Society to, hey, let's take a look at that thing. I might say, no, that's going to unleash the wrath of Asmodeus on all of Galarian. Let's not do that. The Vigilant Seal is here. And there's some great, what I really love about this section too, is there's just a lot of great storytelling that kind of just talks about how the Vigilant Seal supports the other factions in the Pathfinder Society, but also does what it can to really keep everyone safe and to value life and preservation, no matter the potential benefit at all costs. And I think that's what makes the Vigilant Seal really cool. And there's some really awesome items. The one I'm excited the most about is the Metal Mist Sphere, because the Vigilant Seal does its best to understand odd threats. You can basically have an orb that's loaded with like cold iron or silver and launch it at your enemies and just, have a grenade that peppers them with shrapnel that they're weak to. So it's a really great section.
All these sections are great. All four of these faction sections were written actually by members of our organized play team, including Mike and Linda here, as well as Tanya and James from Organized Play. So you're getting the real deal, the full, straight from the horse's mouth details about these factions here. And they actually contributed a lot to this book. A lot of the sections you see here are thanks to their work. So you're getting the definitive Pathfinder information from the team itself when you kind of read this book here. So let's move on. Our next chapter in the book details what probably our most notable feature of the Pathfinder, which is our lodges, which are all over the world, and where Pathfinder members start their adventures and finish their days. And let's tell me a little bit about what lodges are all about, Mike.
So to be a Pathfinder lodge, there are a few requirements that need to be met. You have to have at least one copy of the Pathfinder Chronicles, which are a regular publication put out by the Pathfinder Society that talks about the discoveries and exploits of its members. You have to have at least one spare room or loft or something where Pathfinders who are in your area can rest and be safe. And if you have a lodge, then you have a responsibility to help direct Pathfinder agents in your area, to tell them where the opportunities are, where their efforts should be directed, and things like that. And so lodges can be almost anything. We have one lodge, the Grinning Pixie, which is literally a former pirate ship, and it meets all of the requirements. There's a copy of the Chronicles in there. Anybody can hop on a hammock and take a rest if they need to. We have, the Grand Lodge in Absalom, which is a massive building. It's essentially, a castle with extended grounds that include libraries and towers and all of these things. We've got lodges down in other parts of the world that are literally like 2-bedroom shacks, and the person who lives there is always a little surprised when other agents actually show up, but also a little excited because it's their chance to interact. We even have a lodge that was a former temple to an evil god in a country that is currently ruled by a different evil power, but who is kind of okay with this group of explorers and archaeologists coming through and doing some work. And that's one of the really cool things about lodges. While they have these unifying themes to them, each lodge is incredibly unique and different. And I know we're going to be talking about venture captains in a little bit, and that's going to touch on what their lodges are, so I don't want to spoil that too much. But any lodge that exists anywhere in the world is going to carry a lot of the character and flavor of that piece of the world with it, because it is a part of that piece of the world. It's someone who lives there and is part of that community. And as a result, the Pathfinders get to also be part of those communities.
One of the things that I really like about the close involvement that the Pathfinder Society team as a whole was able to have on this book was how up to date this book is going to be when it comes out. This book is going to include information that didn't go out to the public until the scenarios that are being run at Gen Con right now.
Yep.
And that's a fun thing we got to do, is bring the timeline up to date, like literally in advance. That we wrote this in such a way that we knew just what was going to happen as Gen Con was wrapping up. So as soon as you get this book in a few months, you'd be like, oh, I was there. I helped do that. So the lodge sections themselves, like Mike was saying, they have a lot of unique stuff going on. They're all their own unique locations. I think we covered close to a dozen different lodges, and each of them have a rundown of what the lodge is like, what life is like in the lodge, as well as important figures that work within or with the lodge, and even a little timeline of the lodge's history. And just like our previous sections, they also come with interesting mechanical options that you can take or use for your characters. For example, the Grinning Pixie comes with 2 new kind of seafaring focused weapons that you can acquire if you happen to be at the Grinning Pixie at a time. If you're on the ship, they're for sale there, but they're harder to get elsewhere because, I mean, people aren't selling boarding pikes in the middle of a city in any random country.
Why not?
It turns out they're landlocked. But in addition to the information on the options and the lodge itself, we also, as Mike mentioned, have specific venture captains who are the leaders of that lodge, and each entry details the various venture captains. And I think maybe let's talk a little bit about some of our favorite venture captains here. Leo, do you want to start us off with who you particularly like that we feature in the book?
Yeah, and I went back and forth. I think I'm actually because of how he's featured in the book, I think I'm going to go with the Endo Klein, actually, because I love his story. If you know anything about how the Vigilant Seal was formed in the faction, he basically left the Pathfinder Society at one point because he objected basically to that scenario that I kind of portrayed when I talked about the Vigilant Seal. An artifact was discovered. An army was discovered that could sort of invade and hurt Galarian, and there was a debate whether or not it should basically be cataloged or explored, and Ando was like, no, literally, you're going to destroy everything we've worked to preserve. And because he stood on his principles, he left and then ended up coming back to found the Vigilant Seal. And I think that lesson and that type of leadership is applicable not only today, but it's just really cool in a fantasy setting. And I feel like it's really cool for us to kind of explore the concepts of how do we serve people through the organizations that we represent. And I actually talked to James Case, as you mentioned, Luis. He wrote this, and as he was talking about it, he really wanted to explore that concept. And I think through this character in this book, but also in all of the scenarios and quests that he's featured in, I think we do that, which is really cool to me.
Yeah. All right, Linda, how about you? What kind of venture captain it catches your eye?
So I mentioned Clothra Venery before as a part of the Horizon Hunters. I'm a huge fan of her can-do spirit and the way that she just looks at any challenge and says, you know what, I'm there already. Who's in the boat with me? I also am a fan of venture captains who kind of have these mysteries and secrets about them. So like Eliza Petulengro, who we eventually revealed to be to have a much more prominent role in the society as a member of the Decemvirate. But also people like Drendel Drang, who you have show up in one of the scenarios in first edition Pathfinder Society School of Spirits. He shows up and he's got a medal of service from the Lion Blades, and he's got something from the Eagle Knights, and it's like, how did you get those medals? Like, where did those even come from? What is your deal? So I suppose that what's most interesting to me are characters that raise those questions and that come with a lot of ready-made story hooks to explore.
Okay, Mike, let's hear it.
All right. So we have Biersig Torsen and his dog Maki on screen, but I promised, since you like Biersig so much as well, that I was going to let you talk about him.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk about another one of my favorite adventure captains who is actually very new. He only appeared, I think, about 2 months ago in the adventures. And his name is Narsen, and he is a Razmiri priest in the country of Razmaran, which is ruled by Razmir, the living god, who, if you have actually read our materials, is not a god. He's just a really powerful wizard who no one has been able to successfully contradict yet.
I hear that's just rumors and hearsay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Narsen would agree with you. Those are seditious rumors. But Narsen would also acknowledge that maybe there is some value to questioning. He is a very odd individual. He is a Razmiri priest. He wears the metal mask that hides his features. There is a lot about him that is mysterious, not just to members of the Pathfinder Society, but also to members of his own priesthood, his own peers. No one's 100% sure why he decided to allow the Pathfinders to come claim this castle right on the edge of the capital city. No one's 100% sure what he's really up to. His peers don't trust him. The Pathfinders don't trust him. But the one thing that everybody kind of knows is that he's really, really good at what he does, which includes crafting unique magic items and manipulating a lot of people who would probably rather he wasn't there. Which makes him one of my personal favorites. I actually got to work with Jason Bullman as we were talking about introducing the Exalted Lodge and Narsen, and what it would mean for the Pathfinder Society to have this kind of connection with Razmir and Razmaran. And it's not just a character and lodge that I'm really excited for everybody to get to read in this book, but an ongoing storyline that I'm really hoping everybody gets to experience with us as this edition goes forward.
Yeah, and as Mike mentioned, I'm looking to speak about Biersig Torsen here. On the screen, you're probably seeing two different characters. On the left is Sheila Hydemark, who is the venture captain of the Hydemark Manor in Magnamar in Varissia, who is, I think, one of our venture captains that's shown up probably the most in different scenarios. She's shown up so many times. A lot of people probably know her. And Biersig Torsen here with his wonderful dog, Maki. And what I like about Biersig is just he's a testament. I mean, he's already a cool venture captain on his own. He's a very scholarly type. So he's kind of the type that you would expect, rather than, oh, I had a bunch of money and I'm excited to just have people at my house. I'm going to make a Pathfinder lodge. I care about the commitment to the academics and everything that comes with it. Biersig is also a representation of the different types of people that can be venture captains, and the different types of people that you meet in the adventures as a member of the Pathfinder Society. Biersig was born deaf, so he has to communicate via sign language or with an assistant, things like that. And that just is being able to say someone that is deaf or has other disabilities or just isn't your typical strapping adventurer type as a venture captain is just, that's a testament to the great work that the organized play team has put in over the years. And Biersig is just a great person that is a cool figure, I think, that a lot of people love. And I've been writing for the organized play team scenarios here and there, and Biersig recently is just someone that's like, I love this venture captain. I think he's really cool, and is just, I don't know, I think represents a lot of what the Pathfinder Society ultimately represents. It's just anyone can go out and be a great explorer and learn about the world. So in addition to the venture captains that are featured in the lodges, we also have a big rundown of some of the other lodges. That's just like a little list of other notable lodges and other notable venture captains. We also go into detail about the Decemvirate, not who they are, but what they do, what their role is in the organized play, or in the Pathfinder Society. And we even give you artwork of all of the remaining Decemvirate masks, which some of these have never been revealed before, which was a great exercise in like finding all of the previous information on them and deciding on what these masks looks like, which is
so
fun.
cool. Yeah.
And all of this information is presented in such a way that if you don't play an organized play, you could still bring in the lodges, the Pathfinder Society into your home campaign. So, we give you the history of these because you might want to use Pathfinder Society as an adjacent organization to your campaign, or play a Pathfinder Society themed game without playing through the scenarios and do something of your own choosing. So this is suitable for both organized play veterans and people who are looking to do stuff in their own game. But in addition to all of this stuff, the book features a lot of new rules options here, including new feats and equipment and stuff like that. So I think this character in particular has a lot of connection to both Mike and Leo here. Mike, do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the rules options that you provided, some of the feats here, and maybe why this character is so important to that?
Yeah, so this is a book that we've been talking about all of the lore and all of the organizational information and all of the ways that it touches the world, but that shouldn't let the people who really just want cool new character options to think that this book isn't for them, because this book is totally for you. There is so much cool stuff in here, options that you can take on your character. And kind of this first chunk of character options is in a header called Academy Instructors. And it's about people who are affiliated in some way with the Pathfinder Society in our story and the really cool things that they can teach you to do. We have a pirate captain who is also a venture captain in the society named Stella Fane, and she was introduced back in a quest that was written by the other member of the Org Play development team who's not here today, James Case. And she, when she was introduced, was a pirate captain, and she had these cool kind of like card games and axe throwing games and these other games of chance that she used to kind of test the PCs. And so her feats are really built around those themes. She can do cool stuff with a deck of cards, like throw them as darts or daggers, or disappear in a cloud of them by just flipping them out in front of her and ducking away. We've got feats that are taught by the different instructors, the deans of the society's academies. So there's fun stuff like the Farabellis flip, developed by Marcos Farabellis as a way to avoid nasty attacks while encumbered by armor. And then this character that we've got up on the screen is Malika Sanvara, and she has one of the coolest kind of both in-world and out-of-world stories in how she became a member of the Pathfinder Society. Back towards the beginning of this year, last year, I think, actually, but the beginning of this season for the organized play campaign, I hired Leo to write a quest for me. And I said, yeah, this character, she's a martial artist down in Jalmaray. She's kind of embittered by some things that have happened. And she's created her own really aggressive fire-based martial art. And she's trying to spin off her own dojo, but has put her in trouble with some other allies of the society. So Leo writes this amazing adventure called Unforgiving Fire. You can find it on our website at Paizo.com. And if you haven't played it, totally do play it.
Part of the Humble Bundle, too, as is Port Peril Pub Crawl and a lot of the things that we're talking about characters from. So
yes, absolutely. And while Leo was working on this adventure, he was doing some playtesting. And he came to me one day when the adventure, I think, was about 3/4 of the way finished. And he said, hey, I was running this for some of the other editors, and they wanted to recruit Malika. They didn't just want to fight her. They thought that she was someone who they empathized with, and I want to know if it is okay for me to include some options in this adventure for her to join the society. And I was like, hell yeah, that's a great idea, man. Let's do it. And so Leo made that adjustment. We even included it in the reporting data for the adventure, which is something that allows us, when people log their adventures online, to kind of see what they did. And it turned out that it wasn't just the editors who loved this character. Tons of players loved and identified with this character and were taking the path to recruit her into the society. So as of this book, we have updated that lore to right now, and she has joined the Pathfinder Society as a member. She will appear in future adventures, and she will teach her particular style of martial arts to members of the society who earn her trust. This ties into another really cool thing about these feats. All of these feats are uncommon, but available to members of the Pathfinder Society. Malika's stance, her first feat, is a little different in that it is rare. But if you have played Unforgiving Fire, or you are going to play Unforgiving Fire, then you have already interacted with her and earned that feat, and you can now learn the rest of the style through this book. So it's a really cool blending of the story and the book to bring in some really awesome options. And I'm just going to tell you, the name of the capstone feat for this style is Explosive Death Drop. And it involves picking somebody up and slamming them to the ground in a fireball explosion that also lights anybody standing nearby on fire.
When I name things, I like to be subtle.
Yeah, I think you had some thoughts on some of the other feats here. We're looking to expand the existing Pathfinder Society archetypes that we featured in the World Guide and the character guide. And, you know, that's the Pathfinder Agent and then the Scroll Master, Spell Master, and Sword Master, respectively. Tell us a bit about what's going on with those archetypes.
So what's really cool is that we have the Pathfinder Agent dedication, and so you can take that and then you get access to all of these other feats that can really help develop your character, both to integrate them with the Pathfinder Society, but also just expand the really cool and awesome things they have to do. And I don't know about you, but in the Pathfinder 2 game that I'm playing in right now, I always feel like a well-timed recall knowledge, especially in a combat situation, can be fantastic at helping you to understand what weaknesses a creature has. And so a feat that really stuck out to me, and I feel like is very in world, is called Remember Your Training. It's a 4th level feat. And what's really awesome about it is it gives you your, let's see, I think it's your level bonus. Yeah, you can add your level as your proficiency bonus when recalling knowledge about any creature. And the part that I really love too is that if you fail, it's automatically a success, which is also awesome. And so if you need that, okay, we're not doing any damage to this thing. We need to understand its weaknesses, or, you know, hey, let's maybe not fight it. Let's understand what this creature, maybe it's just defending its territory or defending its young, or who knows, right? But what I just really love is that this is sort of a lore-based way, but also kind of an in-game through mechanics supported way to be that character who really understands a lot about the world around them. And I think that's really awesome. There's also, I'm a huge Nikola Tesla fan, so I kind of had to key in on one of the Scroll Master, which it's an archetype. We have different archetypes associated to the schools within the Pathfinder Society. And this one, with the Scroll Master, there is one called Eidetic Memorization. And I love it because it gives you, I think it's a 10th level feat, it gives you the ability to read one page of anything. It can be a tome, it can be from a scroll, etc., and instantly memorize and transcribe it. I get that it's not as maybe as sexy as a combat feat might be, but as somebody who really likes to build characters who interact with the world's lore, I loved it. Because I was like, oh, that's awesome. I'm going to go down into the deep dungeon, find the ancient scroll that would probably trigger a horrible trap, but get its information anyway, which I think is really awesome. And Nikola Tesla, to tie back, people say that he had eidetic memorization and actually drew the schematic for the first, like the AC/DC turbine that he's known for, that powers and led to a lot of advances in electricity to us, actually drew it in a graveyard because he memorized how the schematic worked using eidetic visualization, and then drew it out for his friend Joseph in a graveyard. So anyway, I geeked out when I saw that name because I was like, hey, this is awesome. So there's a lot of great feats. Those are just two to kind of give you a splash, but there are a lot of great combat feats too that can help you when in encounters, but just also a lot of stuff that makes your character more versatile and more fun to play.
Yeah, and each of these archetypes is getting an extra 2 pages worth of feats. I think this makes the Pathfinder Agent probably the biggest archetype we've had at this point, like rivaling some of the classes in terms of number of feats, which is just great. And a lot of these options we said are tied to the Pathfinder Society, but we also wanted to make sure there's stuff that is just generic equipment and cool gear that you could take even if you're not a Pathfinder member. And I think Linda, a lot of this stuff is really cute too, so maybe you can talk to us about it.
Yeah, so this quill over here on the right is Quill of Passage, and this item kind of gives me a Wile E. Coyote vibe in some ways, because you can take this quill and you can draw a door on the wall, and then you can use it to pass through the wall, which I think is just a really awesome way to get into new places and to explore. And speaking of cute, the familiar satchel over there on the left is a safe way to get your familiar buddy around when you're adventuring. We've got a more typical, so to speak, familiar there, which is a sort of the customized little ferret built with the usual familiar rules. But there's also new familiar options that you might want to put in your familiar satchel. If you have seen the advanced players guides rules for specialized familiars, then you'll know that there are options now to make familiars that have some sets of powers that go above and beyond the baseline ones that have these toolkits like that, like the imp or the spell slime or things like that have those packages. And here's pictures of a couple of them here. We've got on the right there is the Poppet, the adorable little doll buddy who you can customize in all sorts of ways. That one's coming in over from first edition. And in the middle we have the Dwemer cat, the magical fey cat that instinctively reacts to a wide variety of magic and can sense magic around them. These are two of the familiars that are coming out in this book. We've got two more for you that you'll see when it comes out. And we've also got over here on the left, we've got plenty of sort of iconic Pathfinder Society items. So we've got some new Wayfinders, like this one is the fire version of the Elemental Wayfinder. There are Wayfinders for all four of those fire, earth, air, and water elements, as well as this really cool looking hummingbird Wayfinder. There's a bunch of new Aeon stones, since those have such a classic connection to the Pathfinder Society. So there's a wide variety of new mechanical options here in terms of lore and not in terms of magic items and non-magic item gear. You can pick up a deck of marked cards, for example, if you want to do that. So there's things for Pathfinders who are looking to go for a variety of strategies.
Yeah, and we tried our best to make as many of those items as common items as well. I mean, you don't have to have a membership in the Pathfinder Society to buy a deck of cards or a marked deck of cards and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a good chunk of what we're showing off in the Pathfinder Society guide, but there's still a lot more to be found in this book. And if you are interested in checking it out, it comes out October of this year, just a couple months away. You can pre-order now if you're a subscriber. Like I said, you're probably set to go for the Lost Omens line to get that book. And we just hope people like it and get excited about playing the Pathfinder Society, either in organized play or in their own games, or even just dabbling a little bit for their particular characters. So we have a few minutes left if we have time for just a few questions here, if anyone wants to ask us about the book or maybe stuff about organized play that's coming up. But I know we have a few other panels talking about organized play in just a bit, but if anyone has questions about the book, now's the time. You have some of the people that worked on it to get on that. While we're waiting on that, the Poppet familiar, I think, introduces a cool new mechanic for familiars. I think it just adds one ability, which is the constructed ability. That's like, hey, it's made from stuff, which is cool on its own. But then it also has, unfortunately, the flammable property.
Yeah, it's because it's a little, it's made of these little flammable ingredients. So it has a vulnerability to fire. Although if you really don't want your puppet to be vulnerable to fire, you can spend a little bit more familiar points to get rid of that weakness. But the puppet, one of the traits that it shares with the spell slime from the Advanced Player's Guide is that it has a very low required number of abilities for it, which means that it's easy to have a poppet starting from very early on in your character's career.
Cool. So got a few questions here. First, we have from Coro 7600. Why is Ezrin's perception so bad in that question picture? I'm sure he's focused on that. It seems like Fumbus had the mimic on the ropes. No big deal. We'll probably tell you that story in a few months in a Tales of Lost Omens story on that. Brian 273 asks, is there a list of all the Pathfinder Chronicles that have been mentioned in print so far? Don't think the book itself has that list, just because there wasn't we talk about the Pathfinder Chronicles, but there wasn't a good spot to feature a huge list of dozens of those issues there. Are there any lodges on any other planes? Asked Mauve Avenger. I don't know that, so I'll leave it up to you guys.
I'm not gonna say no, but yes might be a stronger answer than I'm prepared to give at this time.
I would say yeah.
Well, actually, no. There is at least one lodge that is not just on a separate plane of existence, but technically is a separate plane of existence.
Well, there you go.
And if you want to see more about that, then be sure to check out the book.
Jay Bowman asks, are the storylines of past seasons PFS scenarios summarized in the book? And yeah, we can say yes, they are. I think they'll go into some major overall plot point details about the overall outcomes, but we won't say. And specifically in scenario 728, it turns out the Pathfinders beat the divs away using this weapon, and stuff like that. It gives you the basics on that.
It's more of a broad sense of the ways that the Pathfinder Society and the world around it changed based on the major events of the seasons in the past, so that you don't have to know those scenarios to know where we are in second edition.
Yeah, the kind of the results and basic flow of those stories are built into what we are presenting here in this book. So if you read about like the Farseer tower down in Katapesh, that also includes a lot of what happened with the Katapesh storyline during year one.
Jay Bowman also asked if the Aspis Consortium or other rival groups are detailed in this book. I know we touch on them a bit in terms of their relationship with the Pathfinder Society, but we don't give you a full breakdown of these organizations and groups. Any Lost Omens Legend style write-ups for the Pathfinder Society founders? Asked Brian 273. I think the history gives you a good rundown of the founders a bit. I don't think we go into a full-on 2-page detail about each of them, but you get to learn about how it came to be and some of the founders and what they were like back in the day.
Generally, the book provides historical context, but then has more of a focus on the content that's going to be more actively useful for your games.
Yeah, you'll feel what their actions, how they reverberated through history, and maybe how they affect the society in this day. But we don't give you a full, they were born here, and then this is how they grew up and stuff like that. And one last question here before we end things, which it feels like a missed opportunity. Zerg Titan 99 asks, can you turn your Wayfinder into a familiar? Which, boy, do I wish I could say yes, you can definitely do that. I think that feels like an obvious Chronicle cheat reward kind of boon thing that maybe we could plan for the future, but that's not something that we include in this book.
Way to toss the ball back to me, Luis.
Yes. Well, I don't have that power anymore. The book is now out of my hands.
Familiars, good on us.
Well, I mean, if you want a familiar that has to do with some of the sort of, but the other one of the classic associated with the Pathfinder Society magic items, then you may want to pick up the Aeon Weird from this book, which is a swarm of floating gemstones surrounding a larger stone that grants the power of its internal Aeon stone to its master. And you'll see the full write-up for the Aeon Weird is in this book as well.
Yeah, so you can tie your Aeon Weird to a Wayfinder, but maybe there's a way we can get a Wayfinder familiar out there, and then you can have 2 familiar buddies that work together.
And since we're already talking about the familiars, the 4th one in this book is the adorable calligraphy worm. Little curious dragons that are constantly going to look for new sources of lore in writing.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us for this panel. Like I mentioned, you can check out Pathfinder Society Guide in just a few months. We hope everyone has a great Gen Con the rest of their weekend, and we look forward to hearing your stories from your Pathfinders in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.